This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Gary Bell of DCS about the value of GD&T in model-based definition.
Plus, what's the elephant on the factory floor?
We're going to find out.
That's right.
When we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for October 19th, 2018. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Director Sharm, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
That he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. Well, hey, Dirk, I'm not sure if you saw it or not. I'm not sure if any of our readers saw it or not, because it just happened today. We just saw a story that came out, ripped from the headlines, about the job market. A really interesting article that we both kind of noticed, and we figured we'd open the show with
holiday season coming up.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Holiday season's coming up. Of course, it starts earlier and earlier every year, and we're now a couple of months away from Christmas. So J.C. Penney apparently has, I think the number was 39,000 holiday workers is what they need. So they need to fill 39,000 jobs. Now, those are temp jobs, of course, but they're putting it out there. They're marketing that they have this availability. Now, as we all know, the economy's pretty darn good right now. It's a tight job market. So to compete, to get better workers and to get, to fill the jobs, but fill them with the highest level people they can get, they're offering some gifts, some high level fancy gifts. They're offering vacations. I saw it in New York and Miami and Banff, Canada. They're offering what they call technology prizes and various things like that, outdoor prizes. So I don't know.
I think these $5,000 worth $5,000 or more.
Bucks, some of them, not to everybody.
Not to everybody.
Not all 39,000 folks. I think
it's kind of a lottery.
I think it was 8 people. I think it was what we saw.
8 out of the 39,000. But still,
I don't think it's a lottery though. I think actually what they're doing is they're going to selectively pick the ones. I don't know. Actually, the story doesn't say. But I think that they're going to probably pick those people based on the people that have really good skills that they want
that would make the most sense.
Make the most sense that they want to keep and retain because, as many of you probably know, they're temporary workers, but once you're in at a company, if you make a good impression and you have skills that they want, they're going to keep you on past the holiday season.
And I think the reason I think I agree with you that this is probably this bonus that $5,000 trips or tech gear. I think the reason that is probably performance-based is I think one issue that every company, retailer that hires seasonal workers has is they've got a very short period of time to teach them in customer service. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows the difference between them being a temp versus a full-time employee. All they know is I'm dealing with this person either stocking shelves or working behind the cash register, and that's either a good experience or a bad experience, right? Or somewhere in between. And so they need those part-time workers to come up to speed very quickly and be very friendly and very shopper-oriented, right? And be very friendly and nice for those people that come in over the holiday season who are already stressed out. So if you do make it performance-based, say, hey, 8 of the top performers that we're hiring for our season are going to get these prizes. That's kind of incentive, I think, for everybody to be on their best behavior, to give the best customer service they can.
Yeah, and it's an incentive. Remember, because again, we are in a tight job market. You think about these 39,000 jobs that they have available right now. In past years, when the economy may have been really bad, they might have had, I don't know, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 75,000 people maybe apply for those 39,000 jobs. Maybe right now they only have 25,000 people that have stepped up that they can say want those jobs because they have other jobs already. So how do you fill the rest of those openings? Well, you incentivize it. Maybe you raise it. They're probably choosing to do this as opposed to raising it 50 cents an hour. If you think about it, but
there's going to be somebody talking about that because there is that. But they aren't the only ones who are doing it. Kohl's announced 15% discounts in associate shopping days for its seasonal workers. Macy's
that could add up.
Macy's is looking to hire 80,000 workers for this holiday season. It's part-time workers would be eligible for its Path to Growth incentive plan.
See, that's an
which is
important
an employee growth thing, which I think is important.
Well, and I want to talk about this from the perspective of bringing people into the workforce, because many times, there's a variety of people who do this kind of seasonal work, but many times it's young people, right? It's maybe people that are on break from college, or maybe they're out of college.
This might be their first real job.
Yeah. And this is really important for companies like Kohl's or Macy's or JCPenney.
Yeah. How do you nurture them?
How do you nurture them? And we talk about this a lot. We talked about just on our manufacturing day event a couple weeks ago, where we need to have apprentices come into our industry and be ready to work and be ready to do good work.
They never wanted to think of it.
They're apprentices.
They're essentially apprentices.
They are. And I mean, there's a connection. Again, it's different levels of industry. I mean, the type of job is different. It's probably a lower paying job than you'd get from if you were at Newport News Shipbuilding, let's say, and wanting to move up. But I can guarantee you that some of the 39,000 people that JCPenney is going to hire are going to ultimately end up in management. Maybe some of them are going to end up in fairly top management too. I mean, they will rise through the ranks. Some of those people.
Somebody,
And they want to make sure that their first impression with those employees, yes, they want to make sure that the customers get a great first impression. They also want to make sure that they're impressing the people that they're bringing in so that they stay and grow with the company. This is a really important issue as jobs get tighter and as the workforce ages. It's a really important issue.
There you go.
Yeah, so.
Very good.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's our rip from the headlines for this week.
Rip from the headlines.
We'll do it next week as well.
All right. Well, we've all seen it. If you work in manufacturing, you have a part design is sent out for production, only to hit repeated snags as questions come up about datums and locators and symbols and values on the drawings. And these can often result in serious delays in nonconformance issues, which results in wasted products. And hey, who the heck wants that, right? According to Gary Bell, author of Realizing the Value of GD&T in Model-Based Definition, companies that still use 2D drawings in their product lifecycle are doing more than simply ignoring the increased productivity that comes from streamlining their models. They are also failing to provide their customers the best, most cost-efficient products and services that can only come from implementing a single, comprehensive digital model that all stakeholders can really effectively utilize. So the goal is to move away from 2D renderings to a completely digital design solution. Companies that incorporate digital DG&T with model-based definition 3D models, and we'll get to model-based definition in a bit, those companies can create more accurate representations that speed up the design and production processes, reduce waste, and improve communication and collaboration. So with us via Skype today to talk to us about GD&T, MBD, and Digital Twin is Gary Bell. Gary is the dimensional engineer specializing in GD&T and dimensional management. Hi, Gary.
Hello.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem.
Thanks for being with us, Gary. Well, let's start with the GD&T. It's been around for a long time. Many people know what GD&T is all about, but we've really kind of seen an expansion, a boom, I guess you could say, in the last decade in its usage. Why would you say that is? And is it maybe because it's easy to generate or calculate in today's CAD software, or is it something else? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I would say that it's twofold. One is with the onset of dimensional management, which is something that's been growing in the industry, people are now realizing that if they apply their GD&T based on the overall assembly product, they have a better chance of meeting their final build quality goals. So dimensional management is what's making the OEMs start doing more and more GD&T, but you are correct. Some of the other errors that happen is if you design your product and then have to create a separate drawing to define the dimensional requirements, you wind up with errors, and you can and it doubles up your work. Now, as technology moves on, you can start adding your GD&T to the 3D CAD. So the supplier who's manufacturing the part, he only needs to get one file, and all the information that he needs is in that one file, controlled by the drawing release or the part release process.
And is this where model-based definition comes in? Because I know what GD&T is. I'm only kind of somewhat familiar with what model-based definition is. So maybe if you can just kind of describe that to us, what it is kind of in lay terms, and then how that ties into GD&T.
Sure. So, model-based definition is, if you think about back in the old days, we would, design a product on a piece of paper. And that piece of paper would have to be converted into a physical, real 3D part. Now, with computer-aided design, the product is in 3D space to scale. So model-based definition is your product in the computer, 3D actual part.
Okay. And how does that tie into, how does GD&T work into this as well?
Yeah, so what happens is we now design our products in the 3D CAD, and they're perfect. So during the design phase, everything works fine, everything's perfect, but now we have to actually make physical parts. So that's where the GD&T is documenting how much variation the manufacturers can have to make that part. So, that would have to be documented in a 2D drawing and passed over to the supplier, and then he would try to make that part within that drawing. Now that documentation is embedded in the actual 3D CAD, model-based definition. So the more information that we can keep in the computer, the more efficient we get.
And what is a digital twin then? So I'm trying to kind of connect all these pieces in my head. So we've got GD&T, which kind of the dimensional tolerances. You've got the model-based definition, which, like you said, is kind of the electronic 3D model, which also has all the information about the part, including GD&T. What is a digital twin then?
So let's say it this way. The model-based definition would be the 3D CAD part design.
Okay.
The digital twin is as we are moving closer and closer to representing what's really going to happen when we go into production inside the computer. So this is what's very exciting about next week is the digital twin is going to include the GD&T, which is the part tolerance definition, and then with 3DCS, our tolerance analysis software, we actually vary those parts. So when you design your product, it's perfect in the CAD system. But when you make it, you can't make perfect parts. GD&T defines how out of perfect it can be. Then 3DCS, which is inside the CAD system, can apply those tolerances to the parts, build your product, and predict how well will your design function in real life. So the digital twin is essentially representing a better representation of what we think we can build.
So does that mean that somehow you tell the software what the variance is that your actual production process can do, and whether that variance in your production process will actually allow you to make the perfect part along with the GD&T specs? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. So to take it full circle, in the CAD system, we define how much the parts can vary. You are correct. We will actually simulate that variation by deviating the piece parts and then building the product. And then we can predict how well will we be able to build our assembly. One, will it always build? Two, when it does build, is it within the quality specifications we want? And to take it a step further, then if you actually start making parts, so when we're doing it in the CAD system during the design phase, we are applying tolerances that we think we can make. Then we actually and we catch errors and we improve our design to reduce our risk when we go into production. Once we get into production, now we're measuring real parts, and they might not be within the spec that we defined with the GD&T. So then we bring that data back into the computer, and run the analysis again. And we can say, okay, with our true manufacturing capability, how good will our quality be?
Okay, so I'm getting a picture here then. So just in lay terms, the first thing you might do with a digital twin is a simulation based on what you think your production capabilities are. But later on, as you actually start to produce parts and measure them and see what you're actually producing, you can feed that real data back in and run an analysis or a simulation again?
Either I'm saying it very well or you're very smart.
Oh, I must be very smart. It's obviously what it is.
You're saying it very well, Gary.
It's obviously me.
You're saying it very well, Gary.
Good job.
Let's be
you
clear.
understood what I was trying to say.
All right. Well, if our viewers are interested in this topic, and you can tell that Gary is very familiar with it, and he's going to go into a lot of detail on this, you might like to know that we're bringing you a webinar next week titled Quality 4.0, How CAD, GD&T drives model-based definition with 3 DCS tolerance analysis software. That's the software we're going to be talking about. Gary Bell will be your presenter here, and I'm your host. So check it out. The event is this coming Thursday, October 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. There is a link to register both in Gary's article and also on the player page. There's also a link out to the webinar. You can click on that, go out and register. It'll be a very informative webinar for those of you who are interested in moving to a full digital twin type system, or even just GD&T in general and CAD. So be sure to check that out. Gary, thanks for being with us this morning.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Thanks, Gary. We'll see you on Thursday.
All right.
Okay,
I'm
so
excited.
Yeah, as you can see there, that's going to be a fun webinar. It's going to be a lot of good information for all you out there that are working in.
See, I learned there in
you
2 or 3
and
minutes.
You did an excellent job of
I'm smart.
presenting it. You're smart, and he did a great job explaining.
I pretend
That's right.
I'm smart on television.
All right. Well, you know, Dirk.
I do know.
If you want to improve, and I know you want to improve, you want to improve yourself, you want to improve your process, you want to improve your organization, now and in the future, you have an adversary. And that adversary is the past.
Oh, we all hate the past.
Well, no, actually, that's not. The problem is we all love the past, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Depends on your past.
Right. Well, in this story, which is entitled "The Elephant on the Factory Floor" by Gwendolyn Galsworth, we talk about the past in a different framework. It appeared in Quality Digest website on Tuesday. And this perceptive little article first appeared on Galsworth's own visual thinking blog. And it lays bare the tribal nature inherent in the visceral fear of change, right? And it offers some tactics to combat it. Because what she's talking about here is, and just to get this out of the way, the elephant that she's talking about, the elephant on the factory floor, is what I just mentioned, is the past. It's this idea that people that are in your team that are working with process and you're trying to improve, they're really tied to the way they've always done things, and it kind of dominates the early stages of any discussion about change, about real and sustained change. Those from the outside who might walk into a new situation and seek to affect change, they need to be aware of this beast, which can take the form of comments like, well, that's not the way we do things around here, right? We hear that one. Or, we've been doing great work here for a long time before you showed up. She actually uses that, almost that exact quote in her article.
It's all good till you showed up.
That's right. But that's exactly what you're talking about, is this tie to the past. So how can one defeat the elephant? Galsworth suggests the following guidelines. This comes from, did you ever see Firefly?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever see that show?
Yeah, great show.
So she talks about this character, River Tam, right? Played by Summer Glau. The fabulous Summer Glau.
A movie that should have come back.
That's right.
Series
so she talks about this as this kind of her touchstone is this character. So these are the things she thinks about when she's trying to overcome this elephant. Don't meddle. Let people be themselves. Take people as they are, not as you prefer them to be. People don't mind change. They mind when you try to change them. That's a good takeaway, right? I mean, they don't mind if you can do it subtly in the right way. Change is actually okay.
Encourage the change, don't force the change.
Don't force the change, really good one. Okay. The next one is notice and promote differences. Do not standardize people. Well, standardize your process, but let people be who they are within the standardization of the process. No is not a negative, it's an adventure, right? I mean, it is. If you think about it, I mean,
try telling that to your little child.
Well, hopefully
no, it's not a negative.
Hopefully, you don't have little children working on your shop floor.
This is an adventure.
See where you can go with that. Maybe that no needs to be explored a little bit. Tread carefully and get your own support group. Really, build up the people in your organization that can help you with that. Engineer and celebrate early victories. Make much of small things. Get people used to the idea of noticing that minute changes move forward and celebrate that. And that's a really good one because, we all want to have the big wins, but really the big wins are composed usually of a lot of small wins. And if you don't take the time to say, hey, that was great that we did it that way instead of the old way, you're not going to really move in that right direction. Follow the methodology. That kind of explains itself. Get physical. What she talks about there is engage in the actual work. Don't just sit behind your computer. Kind of get out on the gemba and do it. Okay. Help remanufacture things. The 5S process is a great example of that, where you really begin to get into it. You don't have to work out and feel like you're exhausted from your muscles pumping, but do a little bit of the physical work. It helps uncork the mental work too. And then let the flow do the work. And that's really a good one too, because really what you're talking about there is similar to the methodology. Is work will flow if you get out of the way and let it flow. If you throw up all these roadblocks, again, relying on the past or not letting people be who they are, trying to standardize people. If you do those things, you're not going to have flow in your process and in your work and in your organization overall. These are all ways that, she's a visuality person, she's lean and she works with things like 5S, as I mentioned. But if you think about it in those terms of going into a situation as a change agent and trying to work with what you got, not force yourself onto it, it's going to be way easier and you're going to get buy-in. And that's really what she's talking about, is getting the buy-in from the people that are there working. And get rid of the elephant, because that's the elephant of the past is really what destroys you ultimately.
This is actually kind of a great lead into our next story. It's, a lot of this comes down to psychology and kind of basic psychology in some ways. Psychology is really an important element in organizational excellence. For managers in particular, the ability to face one's fears, develop resilience, and adapt to change fosters success for the company. And we were just kind of talking about that. The elephant in the room is a good example of that. And also, by the way, success for the employees as well.
And the managers.
And the managers. So returning to the show to discuss the ideas is executive coach, business consultant, and author of the book, The Management and Employee Development Review. We have with us Kelly Graves. Hi, Kelly.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Nice
to see you again.
Good to see you. Yeah, it has been a while. So what's new? How you been?
I've been doing well. I've been doing a lot of marketing and working with clients, and so things are going well.
Yeah. Well, as Dirk mentioned, kind of in that lead-in, I mean, really, we're talking about the idea, and you talk about it a lot with Carol Dweck's work, where you're trying to foster some mindsets that really lead to growth for the people. And we notice, you talk about doing the marketing, we notice that there's a lot out there for people that talk about developing managers. Everybody wants to be a manager development person, and managers want to develop, but developing their people is one that maybe is overlooked sometimes, but that really is kind of where the rubber meets the road, right?
It really is. Yeah, the manager, a lot of times what I found is the manager will read books, go to workshops, attend a convention, and they have the theory and they've got the concepts, but they're not actually transferring those to behaviors. And so they're not talking with the employee, getting the employee involved. And what I like to do is ask the employee, how do you think we should solve this problem? Get their ideas, because I found that with good employees, they're going to come up with the same solutions that you have. And when you do that, people typically support that which they help create. And so by involving them, now you have a nice dialogue, you have a lot more trust, you have some good communication, you get to find out if they truly understand the concept or not. And that's what a true leader and a manager does, is involve their people.
And even involving them in the process of correction. I mean, you talk about this a lot, this 3-day rule that you have, where you're gonna sometimes have to have tough conversations, and learning to have those conversations is a real skill. And if you do it the right way, though, you really can save a lot of people from not having to leave a company, not having to be terminated.
Right, yeah, what I run into is people don't have the firm conversations soon enough and frequently enough. And a lot of times they try to have too easy of a conversation instead of just being, I call it brutally honest. It's best to be brutally honest up front. And you're actually trying your best to save that employee by being brutally honest up front.
Gwendolyn's story, you're probably listening to that. You know, she talks about implementing change, and not not everybody wants change, and kind of her take on that is you don't want to force change on people. But is that realistic? I mean, if something needs to change, is there a way to get employees to change without kind of, I don't know, mandating it and say you're going to do this? I mean, it seems like that's kind of a tightrope to walk of getting them involved willingly versus like forcing it down their throats. I mean,
right. Yeah, there's certain corporations that have a history of really shoving things down people's throats. And if you have that kind of demographic working for you, people are used to it. But I found in today's work environment where employees, especially now, they have lots of options, and if they don't like that, they want to be involved. And the number one thing that employees want is involvement. They want to be recognized. And so let's say that the three of us were leader of a corporation, presidents, vice presidents, and we had ideas on how we need to change the organization. I guarantee you that if we were to pose that to small groups, put people in 3 and 5 person groups, and pose them the same questions, they would come up with very, very similar ideas that we have. And since they helped create it, now we have a dialogue between the employees and the executive team. We come up with those problems and those solutions together, and now we have synergy. Okay, so that's how you get them to buy in. And whether it's a company with 3 people, 300, 3,000, you just break those teams into smaller and smaller and smaller teams. And so now we're getting involvement, and the people feel like they're being heard.
That's interesting. You just said something I never really thought about, but it makes sense. Usually if there's a problem to solve, there's some very obvious ways to do it.
Right.
Pretty much obvious to everybody.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, so if the 3 of us come up with, oh, this is a change we have to make, it makes sense. If we ask that group of people, they're probably thinking the same thing, but now we've asked them, basically, I mean, to put it in probably not so polite terms, we've basically just had them say the same thing that we thought all along, but we've involved them, so now all is good. I mean, it
really is the same thing, but I guarantee you, if we were to take the approach, we come up with the ideas and we try to shove it down their throat, we'll be here for years.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Whereas if we take the hours or days even that it takes to do it this way, we're going to get there a lot faster. So we go slower in the beginning, but then we come out of the turn much faster.
Because everybody feels like they've come up with the
and they guess, really did.
And I guess sometimes it's like they may agree on the same, the general thrust of the idea of the change, but they may have some tweaks to it that we never thought of that actually add value to, let's say, the overall plan, change plan.
Right. We have to come up with the large overall strategic plan, and then when we come down to implementation, that's something else entirely. And again, we want to go through the same process. How should we implement this in your department? Right. Because you know your department and your specific job better than I do. I'm sitting in the executive suite and you're down on the shop floor. You're going to understand what those challenges are. And so what we want to do is duplicate this solution all the way down the road.
If you don't do it right, there's a phrase that you use that I've read in your work that always resonated with me. People go underground.
They do.
And where they kind of
we'll do it our way anyway.
Yeah, they kind of circumvent the thing because they're so sure that their way is right. And if you don't involve them early on in the process of reinventing a process or to improve their work, they're going to go underground. And many good managers don't recognize when somebody's going underground because they'll shine you on, they'll say all the right things, and then you're like, well, why is this changing? And then you notice that they are really doing it their way because they want to do it their way. So how do you realize when that's going on?
The basis of any good relationship is trust and communication, and it doesn't change when you work with an organization. What happens is people want to get to the solution quick because we're all in firefighting mode, and so we want to just do it quick instead of doing it right. And so the way we've got to approach is what we've been talking about. It's the same thing. So whether you want to shove it down their throat, just know that that's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, like what's the saying? It's like you don't have time to do it right, but you have time to do it again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what happens. And that's what I'm trying to preach and scream from the mountaintop is if we use psychological methods, we can really involve our people and get twice as much done in half the time if we just use human behavior. as our guide.
Yeah.
Kelly, what's in the past year, the amount of time since we saw you last, what are some of the key things that you're seeing in your consulting business? Maybe it's problems or changes that you've noticed in the last year?
With my last client, they were really focused on doing things the right way. They wanted to put the money into what we were doing is transitioning from second generation people to third generation owners. And what they wanted to do was not only teach those owners how to be owners, but how to teach the organization to really follow them as leaders. And what they were doing, instead of waiting for it to get broken, they were putting money into investing into their future. And that's what companies do not do, whether it's a family business that does $35 million a year or $350 million a year. You really have to get that next generation ready to lead your organization. And that doesn't take 3 or 5 years. It takes a couple of decades. And so as soon as you get those people in your organization, start introducing them to each department. Get them to work in each department so they fully understand the organization. And they don't need to stay there for a long time, maybe 6 to 12 months in each major department and doing the different jobs within that. So by the time they move up to the C-suite, they're ready to really start learning how to be strategic in running the organization.
Do you think more and more companies are realizing the need to do this now?
I think they really are. The way of doing business where it was in the 60s and 70s where, you know, they were just told what to do. I think people and organizations really do have to change. And so I think more and more of them are saying, okay, what can we do to really change this? And that's why people hire me, is because of the background in psychology instead of just like an MBA.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Kelly, we talked about the marketing a little bit. So now we've been working with you, and our readers should know this. Your book has been out for a little bit now, but people can get your book if they want by going to the article that we just ran, and it's actually, I think, on the landing page.
Yeah, the article's on the landing page, and the link to the book
is
in the article.
You can get a free copy of the book right now if you want to check that out, and you can work through Kelly on that. Actually, go to the article and check that out. It's right below the landing page right down there. And we also mentioned right before the show that you're actually doing a webinar on internal business solutions. Yes, is that the?
Yeah.
Okay. Internal business solutions on Facebook. So you can look that up on Facebook, and you'll find Kelly's picture there on the Facebook page, and information about how to register for that webinar coming up next week.
How do they find you on Facebook?
We just said
internalbusinesssolutions.com.
Okay.
And then the name of the webinar is Leadership Secrets for Executives. So I'll be going into detail about, one, not only how to be a leader, but how do you deal with the stress and anxiety of being a leader.
Yeah, this is important stuff.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, Kelly.
Right.
Thanks for being here. Good seeing you again. We'll bring you back again soon.
All right.
That was Kelly Graves. We also want to thank Gary Bell, who was on our show via Skype earlier today. Don't forget that Gary's presenting a webinar called Quality 4.0, How CAD, GD&T drives model-based definition with 3 DCS tolerance analysis software. Again, Gary Bell, DCS, who we spoke with earlier, is going to be your presenter, and Dirk right here to my right is going to be your host. That webinar happens on Thursday, October 25th, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. So keep your E
on the email.
Keep your E on your email, your I on your email inbox through the week, and you'll find out how to register for that webinar.
That's it. And that is it for today's show, and we will see you
next week.
Next Friday.
That's right. So have a great weekend.
So long.
Bye.